Now in this video we are going to start with chapter 7, where we'll be discussing about functions in Python. Now this chapter will be divided into 5 video sessions. In part 1 we will have the introduction to function, which we will cover now. In part 2 we will be discussing about user-defined functions, where we will be writing our own functions. In part 3 we will study about scope of a variable. In part 4 we will study about Python standard library, which are functions which is already available with Python, which you can use. And as always, in part 5 we will be studying about different programs related to chapter 7. So this video is part 1 of chapter 7, where we will have the introduction to functions in Python. Now function helps modular programming, right? So you will be in a dilemma. What do you mean by this modular programming? So modular programming means dividing a big problem into sub-problems, right? So when you get a huge mathematical questions, for example, in your math exam, you will be having an idea that you can divide this big problem into smaller problems, and then you will solve the small problems, then arrange it back. You will get the answer for your original question, right? So you can have a same approach in developing a big Python software. You can divide it into smaller pieces, and each of these pieces you can name it as a function which does a particular work, and then finally you just have to combine all these functions together so that your software does the job that is required for you. So that is called modular programming. So each subproblem should be independent, and it should have a specific name and a specific function dedicated for it. Now modularity is achieved through functions in Python, which we are going to study in this chapter. Now what do you mean by functions? Okay, so function is a group of instruction to perform a specific task or subtask inside a program. Each function is identified by a unique name. Just like a variable, you have to follow the rules of an identifier to set the name for a function, right? So we have studied this rule in the previous chapter, where you know that the name should not start with a number. The only special character allowed is an underscore. So based on that, you have to give the name for a function, and it should be unique inside a program. Now the function can be reused many times, so thereby avoiding a repetition of a code. So this is a great advantage. So if you do your program with the help of function, the size of your code will be reduced by a large margin, right? The function can be called anywhere within the program, or it can be called from another function. So from a function you can call another function too. So even that is allowed in Python. Any number of functions can be defined in a Python program. So there is no limit. You can have 10 functions inside your program. You can have 20 functions inside your program. It depends on how big a problem your program is trying to solve. Before further moving into the theoretical part of function and the examples of function, let me just explain to you what do you mean by function in common layman's term. Now for example, we have a company which is run by this person. Okay, so just understand that now our company is really small. We have only one employee working in our company who owns the company, and he runs the company. Now his company does 2 jobs, right? His company can add 2 numbers. His company can multiply 2 numbers. Okay, so just hypothetically you understand these are the 2 jobs that is done by the company. So I have many customers, customer 1, customer 2, customer 3. Many customers will be contacting this employee, or you can say the owner of the company. They have different requirement. One of them may be coming to add, one of them may be asking to multiply, like that. So when the number of customers were small, the manager can handle the request that is coming into the company. But now assume that the company has grown. So now there are many customers. So 50 customers are there, and all of them are sending requests to this person to add and multiply. So now owner of this company understands that I cannot handle all this request by myself. Okay, so what he will do? He will hire 2 employees to the company. Now you can see 2 employees have joined to the company. Now the manager instructs to the first employee that you have to add 2 numbers that I give to you. right? And then you have to reply me the answer. Now the manager also instructs the second employee that whenever I call you, you have to multiply two numbers that I provide to you and you have to send me back the answer. Now you can see that the manager has divided the task among the two employees, right? Now what is the manager's task now? He just have to collect the numbers from the customers. Then you have to ask them whether you want to add or multiply. If they say add, then the request will be sent to the first employee. He will add the two numbers and provide the answer. The manager will give the answer to the corresponding customer. Now if another customer wants to multiply, the request will be sent to the second employee. He will multiply, he will send the answer back. So this is the concept of function in Python. Now let me explain things in programming concept. So assume that I have one Python file in which I have many lines of code. Now all this program is written as one single unit, right? So which means that it is equal to my manager doing all the task. If I want to bring in modularity, what I have to do is that first I will create a function add, and maybe the first three statements belongs to add. Then I will create another function multiply. Maybe the first three statements belongs to multiply. And after that, you will have the code for your main program. And inside the main program, if you want to add two numbers, you just have to write here add 3, 4. The control will go from here all the way to the function. Now inside the function, 3 and 4 will be added and the answer 7 will come back to this point. So now if you have written C is equal to add 3, 4, the value 7 will be stored into C and then the program can continue. Now just after 2 lines, if you want to add again another two numbers, you just call add again with 5 and 6. So again the control will go from here all the way to the function. Now the function will add 5 and 6. Now the reply will come back to here and then the program will proceed. So here we have many advantages. First of all, you have to write code to add two numbers only in one place. Otherwise, you see, whenever you have to add, you have to write the code to add. So if I have to add 50 numbers in different points, I have to write the code to add 50 times. But here you see, I just have to write it one time. And in all the 50 places, I just have to call it with the numbers that I have to add. So that's the first advantage. Now the second advantage is that if you repeat the code 50 times, the size of this code will be huge. But if you use modular programming, which means that you are using functions, the advantage is that you are writing the code to add two numbers only one time inside your program. And after that, you are just reusing it 50 times. So the size of the program will be less. There is more advantages. Now here you see, when you write the code to add 50 times inside your program, maybe you can go wrong in one or two places. Now to correct that issue, you might have to check your entire program. But if you have modular programming, you know that the code to add two numbers is written only here. Now if your addition result is wrong, you know that you have to check only this one place. And you correct it, your entire addition will be correct. And the last advantage is that when you are trying to develop a big program in Python as a team, if you are going with modular programming, you can work parallelly. Before starting to code, you can design your program, right? Sitting with your teams, and then we can discuss that our program will have 4 functions, right? So this function will be doing this operation and this function will be doing this operation. And then you can assign the first person, you have to develop function number 1. The second person has to develop function number 2. I will be doing function number 3 and my friend will be doing function number 4. So we all 4 can work parallelly on our own systems, and once our functions are all completed, we can put all the code together and then it will work. But if you are not coding using the concept of function, then it is very difficult to separate the code and assign to different people. So these are the basic advantages of function. Now don't see that function is an option. So some of the students get a wrong idea that I don't like function, so I will just repeat the code 50 times, right? It's not like that. When you actually work in a software industry and you are trying to develop a big project, you will have to go with functions. That is the correct way of coding things. So now let us go to the theoretical part. You will understand it better. So now we are going to discuss about the advantages of function. Now many of the advantages I have already discussed. So first of all, it improves readability of the code and the program, because when you see the code is arranged in functions with proper function names, you can clearly understand this part of the code is doing this particular operation, and after that it's another function which does the next set of operation. So it's very easy to go through the code and understand the overall logic. Now it is very easy to debug due to reduced code length. Now I told you when you use functions, the number of lines of code will be reduced because you are reusing the same function again and again inside your program. You don't have to write the same logic 10 times inside your program, which is not a good practice. And what I mean by debug is to correct the errors. So that is what I told you. If you have a function to add two numbers, and when you run the program, you identify that the addition is not correct. Now in that case, you just have to work on that function, because you know that this is the only place inside your entire program you have written the logic to add two numbers. So once you correct the function, then the entire program will give the correct result, because inside the program you are just calling the function. So as you have separated the work in different functions, so if you know that if this part of the output is going wrong, you can clearly understand that is due to this function. So you just have to go and check the code inside that function. You can fix it. Your problems will be solved. Now the next advantage is reusability of function. It helps to avoid repetition. So that's why I told you, if you have to add two numbers 50 times inside your program, you don't have to write addition 50 times, right? You can just write a function which will add two numbers. Alright, so that's our function. Now inside your program, you just have to call this function 50 times, right? And each time the function will give you the result back. The function helps in faster development of program due to division of tasks. So this is the other example I give you. If you are trying to develop a program as a team, if you are segregating the work in different functions, you can assign them tasks parallelly. They can all develop it together. And once the work is finished, you can just combine them to get the end product. Now there are two types of functions defined inside Python. Okay, so the first type is user-defined function. Now these are the functions which are defined and coded by us, the programmer. Right? So if you want to have a function to add two numbers, you can write it inside the program and then you can use it. That kind of functions are called user-defined functions. Now there is another type of function which is called standard library functions. So these are functions which is already available inside Python. So when you actually install Python, you will actually get access to all these library functions. You just have to call them, it will work. Now one of the function which we were using is our input function. You just write input and now your program has the capacity to read the character from the keyboard to the program. And there is another function which we always use, which is the print. So whatever you write inside the print statement will be printed onto the screen. So you should understand this input and print are actually functions. Now the code for this function is already available inside Python library. We are just using it. Now maybe you can see the code for input will have 50 lines. Now the code for print will have 100 lines. I don't know. I'm just saying. So we don't have to know this. I just have to call the function. The function will do the job for you. So in the next video, we will be studying about user-defined functions, okay? And in the following video, we will see what are the standard library functions available with Python and how we can use it.